about high school. Oh, just a second, the meeting's being recorded. I'll start again. Welcome everyone to tonight's session about understanding high school assessment practices. My name is Andrew Cumberland. I'm Assistant Principal, Program Learning and Innovation, and beside me.
Thanks, Andrew. And my name is Stephen Massey. I'm also Assistant Principal in the department at the OCDSB called Program and Learning Innovation, which is kind of like our curriculum services department.
Perfect. So just if we advance along that first slide there, what we're looking at is we're just going to take a little bit of a back step for a moment. And this is the last year for your child in the elementary school system, which isn't a separate school system from the entire school system. We are a K to 12 learning system. However, there are, as we're going to point out, a lot of differences that will occur. In the entire time your child has been involved, since kinder or pre-kinder all the way to grade 8 this year, they're learning many things, they're learning many skills, they're having many experiences. All of them are described by the Ministry of Education in terms of the curriculum. And one of the important things is that all of these experiences are going to be activated and used in their learning when they come to high school. So we like to think about it's not so much as a transition, more a continuation of learning. Steve?
Thanks, Andrew. And for some students coming into secondary school, starting at grade 9, they may just be walking down the hall. We have a number of schools at the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board that are grade 7 to 12 schools. And usually in one section of the school, the intermediate cohort, grade 7s and 8s are there. And then students transitioning or continuing their learning into grade 9 will have their courses in a different part of the school. But the staff do collaborate and ensure that the best conditions for student learning are in place both in elementary and in secondary. For other students, though, you may be coming into a completely different building. And we want, if you leave this presentation with any learning, it's around there's lots of support. And we want to articulate what those levels of support look like, particularly in the area of assessment.
All right, thank you. And so to the question that we have on the screen there is what changes from grade 8 to high school? And for some of you, you might have children that have gone into high school, and it's great to come and get some more information or a different perspective on it. But there's quite a few things that do happen that are changed. But what doesn't change is what we were talking about earlier, is about the learning, about the potential pathways that students are going to access and that piece. But what does change is how certain things are done. And these are really important things to consider. So if we consider the fact that in high school, immediately there is a lot more differentiation into subject disciplines and the idea of a subject discipline in terms of you have an English course, a math course, a mathematics course, a science course, a physical healthy living course, maybe technology course, and so forth. These are actual individual standalone courses. Now, there is a mix always like in things like science. Science has math, it has literacy, it has all these pieces, but the actual course is by itself. And I'll let Steve talk about the impact with that in terms of credits.
Thank you. And so it is a K to 12 learning experience. So what students have learned in kindergarten through grade 8, there is great continuity in the Ontario curriculum that leads into grade 9 through grade 12, whether it's math or science or French, as Andrew was pointing out. So if you have questions about, will what I learned in elementary help me in secondary? Absolutely, because there is explicitly in the Ontario curriculum a continuum of those big ideas in the curriculum, those overall expectations, and they do lead one from the other. That's not to say that there isn't support. If we all learn at different paces, so if a student needs additional support in one particular area, or one particular course, there are lots of options available. One of the things that we would like students to understand as well is the idea that these courses have credits assigned to them. So to graduate high school, students are required by the Ministry of Education to achieve a minimum of 30 credits. 18 of those are what we call compulsory credits. And as you go higher in the year, so grade 9, there's not a lot of choice. There are essentially, students will take a math, they'll take a science, they'll take a French, they'll take an English, they'll take a geography, and a technology and or a business and a physical education. As you get into grade 10, there's a little bit more choice, and grade 11 and grade 12 is really where students start to differentiate based on their choice of pathways. So 12 credits are optional credits, and that's where students, as they get into the senior grades, will tailor the courses that they need for their post-secondary pathway. There's also a literacy requirement at the grade 10 level, which is called the OSSLT, the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test. And there are community involvement hours that are required as well, 40 hours of community involvement activities.
Should we move on? So the semester system versus the full year. So out of our 26 secondary sites, 2 of them are full year schools, but they also have tied to them is some specialized programs, the IB program as an example. But those are full year where they do the entire school year, where they alternate days based on a semester 1, semester 2 flipping model. So day 1 might be semester 1, then day 2, semester 2. The remaining schools, the majority of all schools, high schools, are semestered. So the semester 1 runs usually from September till the end of January, and then semester 2 runs from February till the end of June. And there are 194 school days every year in the school calendar, and different parts of the days are different purposes they run. And so 87 to 90 of the days might be assigned as instructional days in a semester. And it can vary because of how it fits with the calendar. We have to make sure that the school year ends before July 1st. So every year when we design how the calendar will fit, we look back at that. There'll be 5 days at the end of a semester that are for final evaluations. And then every class is 75 minutes in length, which, Steve, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but takes us to the next steps.
Yeah, it'll take us to what the day looks like, a typical day schedule for students.
So if you take a look at this timetable here, and if you can't see the screen, if you're just listening to this, I will describe it. We have here is, we have a total of 5 blocks or rectangles drawn. And the first one is says the first class, the next one says the second class, then it says lunch, third class, and fourth class. So that's the basic timetable of a high school. And so for students, this is a welcome relief because this is very, very simple from their prior experience. A lot of the timetables in elementary school are quite complex and have 5 or 6 or other day rotational cycles to them. We just have a 2-day model where we might have variation of when the first class occurs versus the second and the third and the fourth. They just might rotate positions. But students have this regularity of routine where they know I have these 4 classes that I am working on and only these 4 classes for the whole semester. So the cognitive load on a grade 9 student could potentially be less than some of the cognitive load they were experiencing in elementary school, just because they have that. One added benefit too is they might have fewer teacher contacts. It's possible sometimes they might have the same teacher for 2 courses. So instead of 4 teacher contacts, they have 3. all kinds of possibilities exist there. Lunchtime is anywhere, on average, it's usually about an hour, but the minimum it would be is 40 minutes as far as the time. And the school day start and end times are they vary from site to site, and a large part of it is busing demands and other pieces that play into that.
It's when students first come in and see their schedule, undoubtedly there's lots of questions, and parents and guardians and caregivers have lots of questions as well too. So what all of our schools will do is run orientation sessions, usually facilitated by the senior students or a group of mentors or link crew, some schools call these groups, and the supervision of the students. However, they create activities to welcome grade 9 students coming into the school, give tours of the school, show where lockers are, and really the grade 9 students get they get first choice, if you will, in a building. They come in before everybody else, usually the week before, on a voluntary basis. So you should expect that the secondary school principal will be reaching out to students towards the end of the summer with their timetable and also with a welcoming letter.
Perfect. All right, so now we're moving into, with background piece on the basics of how high school functions. And I know Steve has mentioned, but one of the pieces that sometimes is not understood is the great amount of caring that high school teachers have for their students. They are really looking forward to seeing the best work from their students and finding ways to encourage it. So rubric is a tool that is used, and this is tied to the Ministry of Education in terms of it for assessment. It's a tool we use to determine how well a student has done in some areas. So this is what we call criterion referenced grading. And it is fairly straightforward. There's levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are described in the actual rubrics by the words limited, some, considerable, and thorough knowledge or skills or whatever's being demonstrated. And it's described in detail in the actual rubric specific to the subject area. And then where you see the R is, that's a case where sometimes they've not yet met the minimum standard. And that's where, as high school teachers, we're working to make sure to bring them up to standard, and ideally the provincial standard or higher. So teachers have, in their toolkit, they have 3 ways to gather evidence of learning: observations, conversations, and student product. If you, which I doubt you are my age, then you may have had an experience where it's primarily student product. But since 1999, with high school reform, we gather data of student learning through observations and conversations. It allows us to get a very deep insight into what someone knows and what they need to learn. So you will have the opportunity to witness this, to see how maybe they are working in groups of 2 or 3 and the teacher is working around the room. And then there's opportunity to see how someone's learning has worked out, how they've solved a problem, maybe get deeper insights into how they understand the problem. And teachers can use this as part of their assessment data.
The learning that's happening in the class is linked back to the Ontario curriculum. So each course, whether it's grade 9 science or grade 9 English, has an Ontario Ministry of Education curriculum with overall expectations, big ideas that it is the expectation of the ministry that schools and school boards are focusing on those areas. So it is very structured. However, teachers using their professional judgment and getting to know families and students will set the conditions for differentiation to try and better understand how to serve students in the class and tailor the education that way.
And so now we are on to the evidence record. So I'll actually have Steve advance the next slide, is the evidence record. And don't be thrown off by this graphic. It seems really complicated, but I'm going to make it as straightforward as possible. On the top, it might look a little bit like the slide that you just saw in terms of the rubric slide there. So at the top, we have the levels 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So these are levels of achievement based on the achievement charts from the Ministry of Education in the curriculum. And on the left-hand side column there, are what are called the overall expectations. What comes from the curriculum that the students actually need to know, or the skills they need to have, or the application of those skills that they require. So Steve's just jumping ahead more here to, if you go to that slide, there is example pointing towards those overall expectations. This particular evidence record, this placemat, is for one course, just for example purposes. It's the grade 11 physics university course. I'm a former physics teacher, so I chose that one. And looking at it, I can see, oh, those are the expectations. There's dynamics, there's energy, etc. So whatever the course is, it will have those expectations down on that left-hand side. And then as we go along to the top, there's where the level. So as an example, we've made like a simulation of a student evidence record that has moved along quite a while in the semester. So if you take a look at this as a parent, what you're looking for is to see, well, how well is my child done along this chart? If you look at the expectations on the left and you look at the levels above, and so you can see the student has had a mixture of fairly good success, level 3s and a lot of level 4s, but in one particular strand, it's much lower. But in the end, as a teacher, when I've got this final data, I'm looking at not the outliers on the left. I'm looking to what is the more recent evidence of their learning and how we will determine a grade when we have to represent it at midterm and at the final report card.
As we close down for today, and we'll also take a look at any questions, but we'll finish up in the next minute or so. It is very important that parents and guardians and caregivers and students are familiar with the evidence record, because it is a record of the demonstrated student learning and the areas of focus. So some questions to be asking your teachers at the Meet the Staff evening, which is usually, it's a voluntary evening for staff, but there's good attendance in September. Be asking about the evidence record, be asking, how often that gets updated and how you have access to that. I think at this point, we've reached our time limit. Andrew?
Yeah, I just to say what Steve was just telling you is it's a powerful tool. It's a great, what we call metacognitive tool. My experience as a long time as a teacher is the opportunities for students to partner with me and say, hey, I was looking at this expectation here, and I've been doing a lot of work around, say, waves as an example, or whatever subject area we're talking about. And then as a teacher working with that student to allow them to demonstrate their learning and show me that their learning has actually gotten deeper, so that the grade, when we come to the end, better represents what they're capable of.
And as students get into higher years of high school, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, as we said earlier, the choices of the courses help tailor the pathways of their choice. Evidence records like this help inform the teacher of the evidence of the student learning. And at reporting periods, so in November and January, there's a final report card for the courses. And then April and June is the final report card. The students, the teacher looks at the evidence of learning, and knowing the learner and knowing the curriculum determines a grade, which is reported in a percentage based on that evidence of learning.
And as far as gathering that evidence learning, it can be all kinds of tools. So with generally in many of the sciences and maths, you use a mixture of testing. So there might be tests, quizzes, and that piece. And then you might be having them doing other work on the spot, where you're actually having conversations with particular problems and seeing how they solve the problem, and then follow up and deeper questions with it. And all of that is what a teacher is recording as far as the performance of the student, in order to get as accurate a profile as to their achievement.
And as students progress in high school, the student services department, the guidance counselors, the teachers, the administration will be guiding students and families with opportunity for information nights around what grade 11 and grade 12 looks like, what post-secondary applications look like, what are the opportunities after high school as well. So that is a very supported information program as well to support students and their next journey after high school. We want to say thank you, everybody, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the evening.
Take care.
Take care. Zainab, just an operational question. Do we stay in this session for the next presentation? Zainab, are you there? So it's now 22. Okay.
Good evening and welcome to the second session tonight of Understanding High School Assessment Practices. My name is Andrew Cumberland. I'm Assistant Principal in Program Learning and Innovation, and beside me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Massey. I'm also Assistant Principal in Programming Learning Innovation, which is the department that supports schools in curriculum implementation.
Great. So what we're going to talk about this evening is assessment in the high school context. But before we get there, we need to go back a little bit and talk about the experiences in kindergarten all the way to grade 8 that your child has experienced in this year's grade 8 year. And when we think about that, the Ministry of Education sets out a curriculum for all of these grade levels. And the curriculum describes what needs to be taught, and in terms of the knowledge, the skills, the application of these skills and this knowledge for the students. So we have these continuums that go from kinder to grade 12. And what we're looking at is the students have had these experiences and they have gained certain levels of knowledge and certain types of skills. And what we're looking at is sometimes building on this knowledge or building on skills. And there will also be new things that they have not encountered before. So we wish you to think of this as more of a continuum than as a continuation than as a transition from grade 8 to high school. Steve will pull in here at this point.
So this continuation of learning, as Andrew said, is very tied to the Ontario curriculum. So in the Ontario curriculum, there is a great scope and sequence. And what that means is foundational knowledge that is learned in kindergarten all the way through grade 8. It's not a separate curriculum in high school that's unrelated to that. It builds on those ideas. That's not to say that if a student hasn't yet grasped a concept that they will struggle in high school. What that means is the high school needs to respond and the teacher needs to respond to provide that foundational learning so the student can access the new learning as well. But there's lots of supports in grade 9 through grade 12 for that.
So the question then is, what changes from grade 8 to high school? Well, there are going to be operational changes, and there are some like cultural differences because we are dealing now with mostly adolescents at this stage. So there will be those factors that'll be in play. But underneath it all is these are still children, they are learning. There is the curriculum provided by the ministry. But now how we implement these things is different due to the age and due to what high school is attempting to do. So if we take a look, if you flip the slide there, Steve, we're talking now about individual courses. So the students will be signed up for a total of 8 courses in their first year of grade 9. And those 8 courses are all independent of each other. So they run with one teacher assigned to the course, and the students are then assigned to particular teachers and courses throughout the entire timetable. Those individual courses are things like English, mathematics, science, technology, arts, physical and healthy living. There's a whole set of them. Most of them will already be pre-chosen for their grade 9 year. There'll be a little bit of choice, but not too much. But that is the critical piece. They are individual courses. But what I'll have Steve talk about is the fact that they also have one other piece that's completely different than elementary school, and that is that they are credit courses.
Thank you, Andrew. So in order to graduate high school with an Ontario Secondary School diploma, and think about post-secondary or life after high school, students have to achieve a minimum of 30 credits. And 18 of those credits or courses are compulsory. So as Andrew had said, in grade 9, there's not a lot of choice. The ministry expectation is the students will take a math, a science, a French, an English, a geography, physical education, and then some choice around a business or technology. As you get into higher grades, so grade 10, there's a little bit more choice, and grade 11 and grade 12 is where students can access the elective courses that will help tailor their education for post-secondary or for their life after high school. So in order to graduate, there are 18 compulsories and 12 elective credits, and those courses are credit-bearing. So they are governed by assessment and evaluation practices, criteria in the Ontario curriculum. So the content that is taught and the skills that are taught in these courses are mapped back to the expectations of the Ministry of Education. And that, that idea of a credit is certainly different in secondary school as compared to elementary.
Yeah, because in elementary school, since there is no credit, there is, in the sense that the student has not met all of the expectations, they still graduate and move on. There isn't retention in high school. If you are not able to get the credit, then the course would need to be either rescued or to take again or an alternate credit. But again, we'll talk about how there's supports in place to prevent that from happening. Semester system versus full year. So in our secondary sites, there are 2 sites that are full year sites where they're essentially doing a semester 1, semester 2 model, but they're just alternating the semester 1 and 2 on alternating days. So those are very specialized sites, and they also have some specialized programs with them. That model has a lot of continuity with this one, just you're switching back and forth day to day between semesters. The rest of the schools, they're on the semester model. So there's 87 to 90 days in a semester of the 194 school days that occur in a year that must occur before July 1st. And of that, 5 days at the end of a semester are reserved for final evaluations. And every class is 75 minutes long. So there is this structure as far as high school that you'll find the same, whatever jurisdiction you go into, because these things are described by the ministry. So this structure is actually simpler, as we're going to see, I think, in the next slides.
And the only thing I will add as well, in grade 8 classes, the secondary guidance team will either meet in person or virtually and work with grade 8 teachers and grade 8 classes and students and families to program a grade 9 timetable, and then for the following year, for the grade 9 year. So there's lots of communication between the elementary and secondary sites. For some, in the 7 to 12 schools, some students may just be walking down the hall to a different part of the building for their secondary experience. For other students, they may be going to a different building as well. But we have designated elementary schools that are community schools of that high school. So there's lots of collaboration of staff in terms of what supports are necessary for students.
So this slide here, and I'll describe it too in case it doesn't show up too well. This actually is I've found in my experience a big relief for students when they come from grade 8 to grade 9. The timetable is so simple. It's not got any complexity to it. It's got the same structure every day with just a minor tweaks that might occur. There are a total of 5 blocks, and the diagram, they're represented by 5 rectangles of different colors, and they represent the 4 courses and the lunch period. So you have the first 2 classes that occur in those first 2 blocks in the morning. And again, 75 minutes each with travel time between them that's separate than the 75 minutes. So none of the instructional time is used for transitioning from class to class. And then you have a lunch time, which is usually an hour, but it's a minimum of 40 minutes. And then you have the afternoon, which is 2 other 75-minute classes. So there's a predictability and a cycle to it for students. The only alterations that may occur on a site is that the first and second class period may flip every other day, depending upon whether it's an odd or even number. And the afternoon classes might do the same. But other than that, that predictability and simplicity is really helpful for students. And the other benefit is that students for a whole semester have a maximum of 4 teachers, ideally. And in some cases, they might have 3 if there's a teacher that's teaching 2 subjects that they have. So it depends on their timetable, but it's, again, a big relief is students when they see their timetable and they get to know it and they get into that groove and that regularity. So it's not part of the cognitive load of high school.
And it also means that in semester 1, which runs typically from September to the end of January, students can focus on 4 courses. And then in the second semester, from February to June, they can focus on the next 4 courses, so 8 credits for grade 9. It is really a supportive timetable designed with the student in mind. And you'll find within those 75 minutes of each class, there's differentiated activities. So it shouldn't be just 75 minutes of listening to the teacher. So there will be group work, there will be opportunity to work individually, there'll be some direct instruction, there'll be flexible groupings, a whole myriad of different instructional approaches.
And that leads us into assessment. And so assessment is described by Ministry of Education documents as to how to do it, as in terms of policy. In the actual curriculum, a large amount of the curriculum in every subject area is devoted to how do you measure achievement as a teacher. And this is to make sure that we have standards in place across the province with that. And if you look at this rubric, it's a rectangle that has boxes there, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the levels of achievement according to the Ministry of Education. And then you have the expectations, what you're trying, the students are trying to learn, and the skills and the applied knowledge and so forth. And then we have a series of descriptors that are in there, limited, some considerable and thorough, and with the language of whatever's being learned, whatever subject area it is, you will see these words being used. And in the cases where a student is not yet achieving that, that's where that level R is used. But then we're going to talk about there are mechanisms in place to make sure that you do learn, the student does learn this material and does move forward. So if we flip to the next piece, teachers have 3 ways of gathering evidence of learning. So traditionally, if you're as old as me, student product has been a large part of it. But as education has changed over the last 24 years and the last 50 years, we have also started to make sure we incorporate teacher observations and teachers' conversations with the students and observed conversations in order to get a more accurate view of the depth and understanding of the knowledge and the skills the student has. So it's a large part of that toolkit. And so where we record all this information in the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board is high school teachers record all of the achievement data that they gather throughout the semester on what is called an evidence record. And an evidence record, it might look like a complicated document, but what it is you have the levels of achievement similar to the rubric I showed you. Go forward there. And it's similar to that, and go one more forward there, Steve, is that you have the levels of achievement at the top and the overall expectations on the side. So if we look at that right now, this is pointing to, in this particular course, all of the overall expectations. What do we need the student to learn? What are the skills that they're going to master? How are they going to apply this knowledge? What are the new instances where to take a look at this knowledge and apply it to? That's all listed on the left-hand side, and that comes from the curriculum documents. And then along the top there is all of the levels, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 that we were referring to. How well did they understand it? 4 being the deepest and most thorough understanding, and R, again, as I mentioned, not yet, but with 1, the limited piece there. The provincial standard is what we call level 3. So let's take a look at an actual simulation of a student's evidence record. Naturally, we could not share a true student evidence record with you because of privacy and confidentiality, but this is based off of a student, and manufacturer student in this case, as far as a student, they've been named. And this is showing, for instance, a series of tests, quizzes, assignments, conversations, different observations that have been recorded by the teacher as time goes on as to the level of achievement that's been demonstrated against the particular expectations. And if you look at this one in particular, this student here, they did seem to struggle in one of the expectations there in terms of possibly earlier on in the course, but as time went on, they are now moving forward. So this is what we use finally as a tool to communicate with the students, to communicate with the parents, guardians, and as a communication tool for students to learn, what do I need to know to improve how I do? And then finally, twice a semester at midterm and at the end of the term, a teacher must assign a percentage grade. This is the tool that gives us an accurate representation of where the student is at.
Thank you, Andrew. And so at the opportunities that you have to meet with teachers, our advice would be to be asking questions, stay in constant communication with your grade 9 students' teachers. You'll have an opportunity. Most schools offer a meet the teacher evening in September. Those are good evenings to go and go through the timetable of your children and see what the courses are like, establish that connection with the teacher. And if you're not seeing the evidence record, be asking questions. Can I see the evidence record? Where do I need to focus on at home to support our child in gaining credit in this course?
Yeah, and I would say, is just to finish off that piece, is that this is a partnership, and the OCDSB recognizes that the successful partnership for student learning is the teacher, the student, and the parent guardian in terms of working together to make sure that the student does their best work and has the greatest success. So we always encourage you to look upon the teacher as someone that you can communicate with and help set the conditions along with them to make sure that your child has the optimal experience and is able to access the pathways of choice that they wish to do so.
We wanted to say thank you. That brings our session for this evening to a close. There is an opportunity to answer questions in the chat as well, and we'll try and get to answering those over the course of the evening, which I believe will be also shared in the video recording. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. And good evening, folks. This is session 3 of Understanding High School Assessment Practices. It's number 3, so I want to make sure that I've not got lost in my notes that I do have here. My name is Andrew Cumberland. I'm Assistant Principal, Program Learning and Innovation, and beside me.
Thanks, Andrew. Welcome, everybody. My name is Stephen Massey. I'm also Assistant Principal in the Program and Learning Innovation Department in the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. This department is our Curriculum Implementation and Innovation Department.
Great. All right. So before we can actually get to the main topic of assessment, we have to sort of step back a little bit and take a look at the journey that your child has been on and continues to be on. And that is it. It's a journey. This is not a transition. This is a continuation of learning this journey. And the movement grade 8 to high school can seem daunting, but let's think for a moment. Think of the fact that they've been learning all kinds of things since kindergarten to this school year about math, about science, about technology, about English, French, and on and on and on. And all of those things are described by the Ministry of Education in curriculum documents, and they are all patterned into one large continuum so that we can take a student from kindergarten all the way to grade 12 and take them on this journey where there are supports along the way to make sure that they learn what they need to learn and go where they need to go. Steve?
For some students, as they continue their learning, your child may be in a grade 7 to 12 school. And so it might just be a matter of walking down the hall and going to a different part of the building. In 7 to 12 schools, there is lots of collaboration between the intermediate and senior divisions, an opportunity to support that continuation of learning. For other students, they may be going to a completely different building, a high school for grade 9, but rest assured there is lots of supports in place, and the elementary community schools are working very closely with the secondary staff to ensure a very supportive learning environment for your children.
Which brings us to the question. What changes from grade 8 to high school? Well, it's not as much as you think. The key thing is that all of the experiences that the student has had from kindergarten to grade 8 are valuable and important to what comes next. But that part doesn't change. What does change is operationally how the school day will look and how we move forward in the actual school. And the big difference is in high school, they are individual standalone courses. So a student will take 8 courses in grade 9. Most of them will be assigned to them because there's compulsory credits. And those courses will have an assigned teacher to them. And actually, I'll get into it later. The special part about them is that they are what we call credited courses. And so that's where the big difference lies as to what is a credit. And Steve's going to take over with that.
So at the end of your child's journey after high school, or at the end of high school, as they prepare for life after high school, life after school, heading to post-secondary or other opportunities, in order to graduate with an Ontario secondary school diploma, a student has to earn or show learning in 30 different credits. As Andrew said, some of them are compulsory. 18 of those 30 are compulsory. So for example, in grade 9, your child will be taking a grade 9 math, a grade 9 science, English, French, geography. They will have a bit of flexibility in which arts they take, and in technology and or business. They will take also a physical and healthy active living course as well too. In grade 10, they have a bit more choice. And then in grade 11 and grade 12, that's where the electives are, where students will tailor their other 12 credits to meet the needs of their choice and the family's choice in terms of what post-secondary or life after high school looks like. So there's flexibility there. Another requirement as well for graduation, as you may have heard, is completion of the OSSLT, the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test, and that is to demonstrate proficiency in literacy. Lots of supports and lots of opportunities for students to demonstrate that. And then, of course, the 40 hours of community involvement, volunteering to build good citizens.
And that takes us to how the actual semester system works in terms of high school. So predominantly, most of our high school sites are what are the semester system. And then we have 2 sites that are full year, but they are an embedded semester system where the students are taking semester 1 on one day, semester 2 on another day. So you'll be able to take what we're about to talk about next and apply it to those 2 schools, but they're the full year schools. For the rest, they're on the pure semester system. So from January to February is semester 1. September.
January.
This is what happens in session 3.
Yeah.
This is live, folks. September to February is semester 1. February to June is semester 2. And in the semester system, we have 87 to 90 days, depending upon how the calendar works out, because the school year has to finish before July 1st, and there's 194 days to fill in there. 5 of the days will be for final evaluations at the end of the semester, January for semester 1 and June for semester 2. And each class is 75 minutes. So that takes us to the really simple part here, which is the big change from grade 8 to grade 9 is a much simpler timetable. The timetable for high school has 5 blocks in it. So the diagram here, if it's not too visible to you, has 5 rectangles, each representing the second class, lunch, third class, and fourth class. And how it happens is a student has a completely predictable high school experience every day. I come in on this day, it's first class starts, then the second class, then I have lunch, then I have third class and the fourth class. These are the individual courses that have credits. And then the next day, the only thing that might change is they might rotate the first class and the second class as far as what order they happen in, and the third and the fourth class. And that repetitious cycle continues. So students have told me what a relief that is. And also they were surprised that they only have 4 teacher contacts at most, sometimes 3 if a teacher teaches 2 of the same, teaches 2 different courses that the student has.
Mm-hmm. In a few months, in grade 8 classes, the grade 8 teachers with their class and your child will be working with teachers either virtually or in person from the high school. And there will be help sessions on choosing courses for grade 9. And then the grade 9 guidance department takes that information and builds a timetable for your child. They work really hard to make sure that it is a balanced timetable. So there's a good mix in there. So the first 4 courses from September to January, and the second 4 courses from February to June have a good balance to them in terms of workload. We understand that students are very busy. They have commitments after school and before school as well, and family commitments and friend commitments as well. So we want to make sure that that experience is a supportive one.
Which now takes us to assessment. So inside of every curriculum document from the Ministry of Education of Ontario that is used throughout the province to determine what to teach for each course and how the credits work, there are descriptions of how to measure the achievement of students. So to make sure that we standardize across the province, we have achievement charts to compare to as to where should students be at in terms of the level of achievement to what they know or the skills they have or how they apply the knowledge that's there. And so we use rubric tools, and this one is not a complete rubric. It's just showing you the basic structure of it, where you have the levels of achievement, and then you have the expectations that the teacher is measuring from the curriculum. And then we have descriptors in there, actual descriptions of what we're looking at in terms of what would be a limited level of understanding in terms of this subject area, this particular piece we're looking at, or what's considerable or a thorough understanding. And thorough is the highest level of achievement. It represents a deep and lasting level of knowledge or skills or mastery that is in this piece. So this teacher is using this as a mechanism to communicate to the student what's expected of them and with doing assessments, which then leads us to how do we record all this data? And in the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board, we have from the Ministry of Education, we're encouraged 3 different ways to gather evidence of learning. And so we gather it through always student product, so tests, quizzes, assignments, things like that. There might be in visual art, a drawing, or any other type of product that we're talking about. But we also are looking at is the observations that we get, what's happening in terms of when I'm watching them solve a problem, the depth of knowledge they have with it, or in conversations between each other or with the teacher themselves as to how well do you actually understand this? Let's take a look at that. Let's dive deeper into this. So all this is the data that we start to gather that we then record on what's called the evidence record. And the evidence record is a template that the teacher records all of the different assessment data that they've gathered during the semester and ongoing, and share with the student as a partnership for the student to learn, oh, I'm not understanding this area too well. I need to, get some more sort of remediation or practice in this area. And then I'll have an opportunity to show you my learning and see if there's been an improvement. It's also a great communication tool for parents. And how it works, we flip to the next one, is that it's similar to the rubric tool there, that you have levels of achievement at top and expectations at the side. So flipping to the evidence record here, is that when we look at on the left-hand side is where all of the Ministry of Education of Ontario expectations from the curriculum are placed. And then along the top is all of the levels of achievement that the teacher can measure it against. So what I'm going to have next is a simulation of a student's evidence record as we've gone far into a semester, in this case in one particular course. And this is where the teacher is recorded, and it is a simulation because we're not sharing private assessment data. This which shows, for instance, this student has done fairly well on some of maybe the tests or quizzes assignments in the strands that are listed there in B, C, and D, but they ran into some difficulty in some of the areas there. And as a teacher and the student, it might be that we've had conversations said, well, what can we do in order to get a higher level of achievement? What sort of task might be needed? What sort of practice do you need to do? And so it's that what we call metacognitive piece that works. This is a very important tool all the teachers use. It might look different, but it'll have the same structure, levels of achievement at the top, overall expectations on the side. But it's a tool that can very easily be read by parents, students, and by teacher to see how a student's doing.
So at certain points in the course, so for semester 1 in November, there is, well, backing up a little bit, in October, there's an initial learning update, which is a communication to home in terms of where the students how the student is progressing. At midterm, there'll be a report card, just like in elementary school, that has the 4 courses and the overall grade at that point in time. There's a question about how the 4-point scale or the levels equates to percentages. So a level 4, for example, is, according to Growing Success, which is our ministry assessment document, above 80%. Right? And depending on the evidence, it could be in the higher range of 80% or 90, or it could be in the lower. Level 3 is a provincial standard, and so that's from 70 to 79. Level 2 is from 60 to 69, and then level 1 is from 50 to 59. R is not yet. And so we take a growth mindset, and when a student hasn't yet demonstrated limited evidence, we provide a litany of support. At the end of the course, in January, there is a final grade, and teachers use their professional judgment, looking at the evidence of learning to determine a grade. As students get into higher years, it's the same process. In grade 11 and grade 12, for post-secondary applications, those report card grades are also submitted to post-secondary. I hope that answers some of your questions. So at this point, I think we're just wrapping up. So we're around here for another session as well too. It is time to, there's one more session remaining. So this is break time for the next 5 minutes. We wanted, on behalf of Andrew and myself, we wanted to say thank you for joining us this evening. And if we can leave you with any piece of advice is we believe that it is a partnership between the student, the parent and guardian and caregiver, and the school. And so as just like in elementary school, we want to ensure there's lots of two-way communication or three-way communication in terms of the students, parent caregivers, and teachers. So please reach out to teachers. Take every opportunity that you can to set the learning conditions and be engaged in what's happening at the school. Ask questions because we fully understand that we all work together so that students can have their optimal success.
Yeah, and as a former teacher, I always want is parents to reach out if you have any concerns. Is reaching out by email is a great way. Just make sure in the body of the email that you have the full student's name. Please don't put that information in the subject line just for privacy reasons. But definitely, it is a great thing when you do get communication from parents. It really helps you find out the best supports to put in place to make sure that your child can get to where they want to be and to access the pathways within high school and the pathways after high school.
And the pathways of their choice. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, folks. This is session 4 of Understanding High School Assessment Practices, and my name is Andrew Cumberland. I'm assistant principal with the Program Learning and Innovation Department at the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. Beside me.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Stephen Massey. I'm also assistant principal with Program and Learning Innovation in the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. And this department is our curriculum implementation department in supporting schools and school staff in the implementation of curriculum to support students.
Excellent. So before we can take this journey into looking at high school assessment, we need to sort of take a moment to reflect back on the journey that your child is still in, but has been in since kindergarten to grade 8. And during that time, the schools have been following, as all schools do, the Ontario Ministry of Education curriculum that describes for everything that is taught from like kindergarten to grade 12. They've been learning different types of knowledge, different types of skills, different types of applications of this knowledge and transferable skills for that knowledge. And it's all mapped out into large cycles of learning. So the prior knowledge that your child has picked up is going to be reapplied and put into new instances. And in some cases, they will have completely new knowledge that appears, but it'll be the background that you get there is what was learned possibly in grade 1 or in grade 2 or in grade 4 will be important to that journey moving forward.
So thank you, Andrew. So that's a really important point. The K-12 curriculum has a very strong continuum or scope and sequence. So the ideas that are introduced earlier on in, let's say, math or science or languages, those continue. Now, that's not to say that if a student comes to high school and they haven't yet had that opportunity to learn a particular concept or overall expectation, there are lots of supports in secondary, as there are in elementary, to ensure that students are given the foundation that they need. We spend a lot of time on differentiation in the different courses, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So we really want to impress upon you and your child that this is not really a transition. This is a continuation of learning. For some students, it might be they might be in a 7 to 12 school, and it might mean that next year you're in a different part of the building, but you're still in the same school. There would be different teachers, but the elementary and secondary teachers spend a lot of time collaborating and learning how to best serve students and create the learning environments. For other students, they may be heading off to a different building in grade 9, but rest assured that the elementary community schools are in constant communication with the secondary school. And so there's lots of support and communication that is available there in that continuation of learning.
Which leads us to the question, what changes from grade 8 to high school? Well, the answer to this is actually fairly simple. The difference between the two is a structural one. It's more about organization rather than about the actual things that are being learned. So in high school, we have individual courses. So you'll have English, science, math, technology, arts, physical and healthy living, separate individual courses. And your child will be essentially signed up to like 8 courses in their first year. But in those 8 courses, there won't be a lot of choice. And that's because every course essentially has what's called a credit behind it. And that's the big difference between elementary school, K to 8, and 9 to 12, is that now the courses have a credit. The credit of a full credit is value 1, and the student must accumulate a total of 30 credits in order to complete an Ontario Secondary School diploma. So just taking the course is not sufficient. They must have evidence that they have understood to a minimum standard everything that is in the course in order to obtain the credit and move on. So Steve, I think you will take over from there.
So that journey is scaffolded, and the expectation of the Ministry of Education is in grade 8, there's a foundation. So grade 8 and grade 9. So as Andrew had said, in grade 9, there's really not a lot of choice. Students are taking grade 9 math, grade 9 science, grade 9 French, grade 9 English. They would also take grade 9 geography. They have a choice of which arts to take, physical education, healthy living, or technology and business. Those areas are really the only areas at this point where students have choice. There's lots of supports at the grade 9 level as well, because we understand that that is a very important time, particularly in adolescent brain development. And we want to make sure that the student is well supported in their learning. As Andrew said, there are compulsory credits. So to graduate, you need 30 credits, and 18 of those are mandatory or compulsory through grades 9, 10, and 11. The only discipline that has a compulsory every year is English. So grade 9 English, 10, 11, and grade 12 English. But as students get into grade 11 and grade 12, as they start choosing their pathways in conversations with you and starting to think about what life after high school looks like, students can tailor their elective courses so they can apply to different programs in post-secondary or whatever opportunities they have after school. Students also are required to satisfy a literacy requirement, as well as some online credits and community involvement. But those will be all discussed at the school level in the myriad of different opportunities of orientation evenings and communications home that you will experience over the next couple of months.
So that takes us to the actual structure of what are called the semester. So we have the high school sites in the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. We have 2 school sites that are full year. And they are a semester system, but it happens over the full year, where students take semester 1 classes one day, semester 2 classes the next, for the whole school year. So the semesters, there are 2 semesters, are constantly occurring and smeared out over the full school year. For the rest of the high schools, they have semester 1 first, followed by semester 2. And the school year calendar always has 194 school days in it that has to finish before July 1st every year. So the calendar must be set up the year before in order to ensure that happens. And then that determines how many days there'll be in semester 1 and semester 2. So it could be anywhere from 87 to 90 days in a semester of schooling. 5 of the days at the end of the semester will be for final evaluations to take place. And those will take place on in January and in June, as far as the semester system, and every class 75 minutes long. So that takes us to the next structure, which is the timetable. It is a great relief. So many grade 8 students, when I've met them on tours coming to the high schools I've worked at, one of the big stress relievers is when they actually see a high school timetable and they see how simple it is, because it is in elementary school. They're usually a lot more complex than this. So we have 4 blocks of classes with 1 lunch block. So that's 5 blocks, 5 rectangles represented on the screen here, where you have the first class, the second class, lunch, third class, fourth class. Each class is 75 minutes. There's travel time between them that is not part of the 75 minutes. So the 75 minutes is purely for instructional time. And then there's 5 minutes or 10 minutes of travel time between those. And then you have a lunch that's at a minimum of 40 minutes, but on average is about 60 minutes. And the only variation that occurs is the first and second class and the third and fourth class might switch position every other day, but it's on a regular schedule. The students can predict. It's a great routine. It's very easy. And another benefit is the maximum number of teacher contacts that a student has is 4 in a semester, but they might only have 3. So again, another great positive of a very simplified system.
As we said before, there's lots of communication and collaboration between elementary and secondary. So in a few months, starting in January, February, some of the the secondary guidance staff will either virtually or in person be meeting with grade 8 classes and their teachers and going through course selections, ensuring that they're all submitted the way they're supposed to be. And then the secondary student services team builds timetables for students according to the school schedule, which is being built at the same time. And they work really hard to make sure that it is a balanced timetable so that the first 4 courses that students are taking from September to January and the second 4 courses from February to June, there's a good mixture in there. And of course, along the way, there are lots of supports in terms of to ensure student success.
Which now takes us to assessment. So in the curriculum documents, there's detailed descriptions in every curriculum document for every course about how student achievement should be measured. And that's in the front matter of the curriculum that all teachers access in order when they're designing their courses and implementing their courses. As part of that achievement data, we have a mechanism called rubrics that we use to measure when we're doing assignments, tests. It might be an interview, whatever the actual assessment practice that we're using at that moment, we have a rubric in order to measure how well the student knows the knowledge or has the skills or has applied it in new instances. And we have descriptors from the levels. We have level 1, 2, 3, and 4 that describe how well they know it to a limited, to some extent, considerable or thorough. This is language directly from the ministry. And then we have in some cases when students have not yet mastered that minimum level, we talk about it as being an R, but again, we'll have things in place to support that student so that we can get them to at least a limited understanding and then move on to deeper and deeper levels of understanding. This is all based on the overall expectations. How to gather that data? Well, we have three very sophisticated tools in the toolkit for triangulating on student learning. We've always got the student products, and some of those products are becoming even richer in time, especially with electronic tools. So things you have like traditionally like tests, quizzes, we continue to do this. You have different types of assignments. We have amazing in mathematics, amazing simulation systems that are used globally. All of these are a form of student product. But inside of there, we're also looking at is the conversations that a teacher is having with the student, the conversations that they're overhearing between two students, the observations they see as they're solving and working their way through a problem. All of this is assessment data that then can be captured ultimately on the evidence record. So the evidence record is a placemat where teachers can record all of this data that they have gathered throughout the semester that is very similar to the rubric tool I just mentioned, where you have levels on the top and expectations on the left there. So taking a look at this evidence record, we can see that the left-hand side has the overall expectations, the knowledge, the skills, the pieces that we want in the course coming from the Ministry of Education curriculum documents. They're directly transposed there. And then along the top, we're measuring the levels of achievement, 1, 2, 3, or 4, as to how well they know this and how deeply do they know it. So to give you an idea of what this will look like, we created a simulation of one. So this isn't an actual student's record because we need to make sure we're protecting privacy and confidentiality. So based on what has happened in the past with different students, we just took a typical type of evidence record. This student has a series of tests, assignments, observations, conversations that have been recorded on it. And it's tied to what has actually been taught on the left to how well they understand it above. And just a quick glance, you can see the student has had a lot of opportunities where they've achieved a level 4. And in this case, the time series of this course is the expectations are going from top to bottom, but their actual performance has been improving. And then when looking at it, having a conversation with the student, we can see that clearly there was a time period there with some of the expectations that you would see that were insufficient or level 1 on the left. That's where what sort of supports can put in place to learn what you need to do, because later on, they then finally were able to show their mastery of the subject material.
And so what you should expect to see at the beginning of a course, so if it's semester 1, for example, usually around October, there is an initial learning update that comes home that just gives general idea of how a student is progressing in that course. There's an opportunity for parent, teacher, or guardian caregiver interviews. And then halfway through the course in November, there is a midterm report card that is sent home through School Messenger. At the end of the course, in January, for example, semester 1, that is the final report card for semester 1. And it's the same in semester 2. The teachers use this evidence of learning to work with students in areas of need, or in areas that the student wants to demonstrate further knowledge or understanding of the ideas in whether it's math or science, or French, English, arts, and so on. This is a document that you should be familiar with and that teachers should be communicating to you with, because we believe it is a partnership between the student, the family, and the school and the teacher. So evidence, or what you're seeing on a report card, should not be a surprise in terms of where a student's learning is at. At the end of a reporting cycle for these report cards, teachers will use this evidence of learning and their professional judgment to determine a grade. We often get questions about, well, what does the grade look like? It is a percentage on the report card. So a level 1 is from 50 to 59%. Level 2 is from 60 to 69%. Level 3 and 4 are at or above the provincial standard. So from 70 to 79, and above 80% is level 4. So as students progress into higher years, they still get percentages on their report cards, but as they're thinking about program pathways and those choices, and if they're applying to post-secondary, that is how that information is transmitted. But schools will spend a lot of time in each grade helping students understand what the choices are for the next year in terms of whether it's another grade or it's post-secondary application. There is a few questions here as well. I just want to backtrack a little bit. One of the questions was around the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test. It is typically done in grade 10, and it is a literacy standard. It is an online large-scale assessment that measures individual demonstration of literacy. If a student is not yet successful on that, they have a few opportunities. They also have the opportunity to take an Ontario or the Ontario literacy course. So, and that's usually offered in their grade 12 year. So it's scaffolded. If students don't yet meet the literacy requirement by grade 10, there's lots of opportunities after that as well to ensure that that graduation requirement is met. The other question that we had is the level of parent involvement with grade 8 students choosing their courses. So as I said before, there's lots of working with the grade 9 staff and the grade 8 staff working with students. There's also information coming home, and there should be a sheet that's coming home. I believe it's still in sheet form. It could be electronic, but there is a parental sign-off in that as well too, so that you're in the loop in terms of what courses are being chosen. I will reiterate again, though, in grade 9, there's not a lot of choice. Really, it's just around the electives of art and business or technology. But we would encourage you to work with your grade 8 teacher, as well as contacting the secondary school. And they'll be messaging out different information about orientation nights and parent nights over the next couple of months. If we leave you with any piece of advice, we would really encourage parents and caregivers, guardians to get involved with the school, be asking questions. Avail yourself of the opportunities to get to know the teachers and how best to support what's happening in the classroom, and also provide information to the teacher that would help the teacher understand and get to know the student, so that they can use that information to better provide or the right learning conditions so students can be successful in the course. Sometimes, there's a myth that in high school you should sort of back away. It is gradual release of responsibility as students get older and older, as they progress through early and mid to late adolescence. But we really encourage parents and guardians, caregivers to be involved in their child's education and to work with the teacher or the department head or the principal.
Yeah, the research has shown it's a valuable partnership, and it's very easy to reach out to teachers. Just make sure when you do, if you're sending an email, include in the body of the email, not the subject, the full name of your child, just so that there's not any way that they have to try and figure out who it is, because there's no linkage we have as far as your emails that tie directly to you in the database that we can easily find. So just reach out with email. Quick way. If you don't have that access, you can always phone the school and they can make sure that the teacher does get messaged with this information. But we, teachers, definitely want to know what's happening with your child. Is there something we need to do in order to help them be more successful or engage, or even look at pathways and choices as to what comes now and what comes after.
That brings us to a close for session 4. We wanted to say thank you for joining us this evening. We hope that this has been a useful session for you. And again, we encourage you to reach out to your child's current school and their grade 9 school as well, should you have further questions. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your evening.
Good night.